So China presided over this big meeting in Tianjin. A big military parade, lots of countries attended. What does this mean? Should we all now be panicking? No. I've heard from some people that they were really disconcerted about what just happened in Tianjin. That China really showed that they're building an alternative to the Western system. We had President Putin, or rather dictator Putin of Russia, show up. We had President Modi of India show up. Eventually also Kim Jong-un showed up for the parade. We even had some Europeans show up. What does this mean? Is this a new alliance of strength? Let's look at this in a little bit more detail. Let me move to the side and put in the facts here. Who attended? Well, this was basically a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and some of the people participating were indeed members. Some of them are former Soviet states that are neighbors to either Russia or China or both, or they're neighbors of China or somehow in the vicinity of China, and they may have to yield to China's influence occasionally, and then there were some others. So first we have the so-called CRINKS, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. That is not surprising. This alliance of dictators has been around for a little bit. It is disconcerting, of course. It is not what we would like to see, but there it is. China is not at its best right now, or let's say communist China. They're still trying to claim that they want to invade Taiwan, which is why the United States has to play this unfortunate double game between Russia and China, and that's why Europe has to be on its toes when it comes to Russia and the US when it comes to China. But China has seen its real estate giants like Evergrande and Country Garden have real problems. There are rumors about it having much fewer people than alleged. I can't comment on that. I'm not a specialist on that. We've seen protests in China recently. Of course, they're quickly suppressed, but they're there. And it seems to me that China is not on its best game. This is not the China before Xi Jinping. This is not the China that's going to dominate the world with innovation and with real alliances. That's not it. Next, Russia. Well, Russia is economically declining. It is fighting a losing war. It is trying to pretend it's relevant because it has nukes, and that's all it is. Russia is completely dependent on the West economically, and so actually is China, because it's the West that consumes stuff. I mean, it's American consumers mostly, but also European consumers that China relies on. It's European and a few other recipients that Russia wants to sell its oil and gas to. But without the West, these nations don't have the market. China may support Russia as a fellow autocratic partner, but there's no love lost. We all know that. Or we should know that. That's always been the case. That's not new. Even in Soviet times, which I remember very well, China and Russia were two different camps within the Communist alliance. So that's not new that the two are at odds. Iran. Well, Iran has been severely weakened recently because Israel has diminished Hamas, has diminished Hezbollah. Hopefully the Houthis will also be diminished further. Syria has fallen, Assad has fallen. Iran is fighting to maintain its relevance. Tehran has run out of water. That's a completely different thing, but it has to do also with government corruption in action. And its influence is less than it used to be. Then North Korea. Well, North Korea can send soldiers to Russia, but the North Korean economy is not in any way relevant. All these four nations, all they can do is posture militarily, be a threat militarily too, but there's not the economic power to it. And if China were to be determined to wage war against the West, it would not win, and it would basically shoot itself in the foot. Just like Russia is doing right now. There's no purpose, logical, hard economic, political purpose to what Russia is doing. If the CRINKS see themselves as an alliance, they're severely underestimating the West. So let's look at who is also in that Shanghai organization. Belarus, occupied by Russia. It's the other victim of Putin. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, they're all within the Russian sphere of influence and trying to get loose from it, but they can't really because geography is geography. Cambodia is just a dialogue partner, Armenia and Azerbaijan too. Further members, India. Well, India and China aren't friends. No matter what you saw there, Modi was signaling basically to Donald Trump to cut it out, to not antagonize India. That's what Modi was doing there, which is an unfortunate development, but I think that eventually China will not be able to help itself as it tries to gain more territory and it tries to antagonize India. So I don't see this going anywhere. We should calm down about that. Pakistan, well, China has tried to get territory from Pakistan too. So that's... Some of these members are members probably because they believe in pacifying China by being part of it. And then other dialogue partners here, Myanmar, Nepal, also under Chinese threat, you could say. Egypt has had a complicated relationship between the West and the East, so I'm not surprised it's on the list. The Maldives, strategic location. Turkey is trying to figure out where it stands, but it's still a member of NATO, and it tries to be neutral. Then you see a number of countries that are simply, through their position of being neighbors, unable to not be somehow involved with China, who came to the parade. Well, economic heavyweights like Cuba, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zimbabwe. Serbia, well, Russia's last outpost within Europe, but let's see how that goes eventually. Slovakia, dependent on Russian oil. I'm actually surprised, and maybe I'm mistaken, maybe Hungary sent somebody, but I'm surprised Hungary didn't send a representative. But when you look at this list, with the exception of still China and India, to a certain degree Turkey, none of these are heavyweights. None of these are of the economic power as most Western nations. And India, I think, is on this list just strategically. So playing this game of, well, if you don't respect me, I can always go to the other side. So, what does this mean? Well, it means that we should probably not be too much obsessing about this. It also means that, yes, there is, in principle, competition to the West, and that's good. Economic cooperation is always good. Economic cooperation ideally means the furtherance of peace. That's what economic cooperation ideally creates. But only if you don't deal with an irrational lunatic or with a person that dominates a country whose rationality is just based on their own self-interest as a person. So basically Putin, or as a party, like the Chinese Communist Party, or a quasi-party, like the mullahs in Iran. If you have selfish leaders that don't care about their country, of course, economics is different. But in the long term, such positioning will not be useful to these countries. And nevertheless, it is important to not drop the ball here. While we shouldn't be too disconcerted by this meeting, even by the military parade, there's nothing lamer and more ridiculous than a fancy military parade. It's embarrassing, really. All you do is you're showing that you've trained your soldiers unnecessarily, endlessly, for some idiotic parade. This has nothing to do with actual military power. All these soldiers know how to do, all we learn from there, is that they know how to march. Well, I served in the Bundeswehr for my military service. Yeah, we marched a little bit, but only the Guard battalion, whose job really is to be representative, these guys know how to march and how to present. All the others, well, point of marching is not to stop on the person's feet that's walking behind you. That's why you have to synchronize the walking. That's what I learned to do. We didn't learn how to look like perfect Nazis or communists all in a row. No. The military infrastructure we got to see, the weaponry, some of this we need to look at. Should we be afraid? Only if we drop the ball. So this was actually helpful to see that we can't give up on ourselves. We can't keep talking ourselves down. We can't keep destroying our own strength. There's really still one show in town, that's the West, and whatever CRINKS wants to do, whatever the Shanghai Organization wants to do, they're economically dependent on the West. So, lesson here, keep going strong, keep supporting your democracy, keep supporting your economy, keep supporting your alliances, don't alienate your allies. Do make sure that all the allies are supporting each other, but unless the West lets itself be fractured by this group, we shouldn't be too afraid. Concerned? Yeah, always. Concern is always good. But fear? No. So, yeah, that's what I have to say on this. I just... Big show in order to make us feel less than. All we need to do is carry on, defeat Russia, put stops towards China and Iran and North Korea, and show the world that the West is still the voice for economic development, democracy, freedom, and all those things that none of these in the CRINKS can deliver. They can't deliver on anything relevant to people. And so, let's just see. Thank you very much. This is Dr. Philipp Kneiss. This is Erratic Attempts. Like and subscribe if you want. Leave a comment. Otherwise, thank you for watching and see you soon.